Hello students, welcome to this live analysis for the IIM Kozhikode's BMS admission test. We've just spoken to a lot of our students and we are now ready with a detailed analysis of the paper we just got over at 4 p.m. Okay, so what are we going to discuss? We are going to discuss the paper pattern. We are going to discuss topic-wise number of questions in each of these sections, and we'll also look at what can be a good score, what can be the possible cutoff, and then we end it with what next. Okay, so the structure of the paper was as expected. 50 questions each, quants and verbal, 60 minutes each for each of these sections, and the marking scheme +3 and -1. Order of the sections was fixed for the students. They could not go from one section to another before the completion of the first section's time. So for the first 60 minutes, full 60 minutes, you are in the VA section. You start with VA, then you go to the QA section for the next 60 minutes. Okay, so there were sectional time limits also, and the order of the section was also fixed. There was also an on-screen calculator that was available. Quite a few questions in quants could have been solved with the best use of the on-screen calculator. You have to be very careful when you're doing this, because you tend to overdo it, which you should not. But at right places, if you use it, you can actually gain a lot of speed. Okay, so let's get on to the first section now, verbal ability. In the verbal ability section, there were 15 questions across 3 RCs, 5 questions each. These 15 questions were slightly on the difficult side, is what the students reported. In fact, most of all these 15 questions were inference based and none of them was direct. Out of these 3 RCs, the first RC was love as some red rose analogy or metaphor on that. Second RC, plastic pollution. Both of these RCs were manageable to an extent. The third RC, industrial output in the US, was the most difficult of the 3 RCs. That's what the students reported. Okay. There were 5 to 7 questions in the spot the error kind of questions. Idioms and phrases, there's one interesting thing that IMK did. Idioms and phrases, almost 8 to 10 questions. Interestingly, most of these questions had the same options. So if you get the first 2-3 questions correct, you can, even if you don't know the next 2-3 questions, you could have eliminated your options, because some options have already come as an answers to the previous question, and students could get their way out of these questions. So that was an interesting twist. If the students had the presence of mind, they could have used this trick also. There was one paragraph in form of the fill in the blanks, which was like a story, and each sentence was on fill in the blank, and each had one fill in the blank. So there were 5 questions there, and roughly 7 to 8 questions on vocab. Vocab was also, in fact, this story writing, the fill in the blank, was a little on the trickier side. They were not very easy. The words were not very commonly used words. You had to think a little. Vocabulary was quite manageable, is what the students said. So overall, we thought that this section was easy to moderate, not really difficult as such, but easy to moderate. Good attempts, 38 to 40ish. Lot of our students reported that they have attempted in this range. So we think the good attempts will be in between 38 to 40. Good score therefore should be in excess of 98 plus. Now remember, what we are saying here is a good score and not really the cutoff. Cutoff obviously is going to be lower than this. This is a good score. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the criteria of the shortlisting for PI. That is when I'll explain the logic, or maybe this thing will get clearer. Okay, great. So that's the verbal ability section, the first section. We have found roughly around 45 to 50 questions tally in this particular slide, and overall we thought the section was the easier of the 2 sections of Quant and VA. VA was the easier section. Let's move on to quant. So quantitative ability, 2 most dominant modules in the section were arithmetic and geometry. In arithmetic, percentage, profit loss, ratios, only these three topics have had almost 10 to 12 questions. SICI, mixtures, allegations, averages, another 6 questions. So if you see, arithmetic easily takes the pie at least of 18, 20 questions, bare minimum out of 50. So arithmetic had a big share, a big role to play. So if you have done your arithmetic well, you were comfortable. Surprisingly, there was not a single question on time, speed, distance, or single question on time and work. Yeah, that was surprising. Geometry, all across the chapters there were a few questions. What we heard was there were very basic questions in triangles, circles, like area of triangle. In circles it was asked area of arc, area of a sector or something, length of an arc, area of sector, etc. So those were very basic questions. One or two tricky questions had come in coordinate geometry. Trigo, there were the three questions. One was, I think, on angle of elevation, depression. One was on basic identities that you could do, and quite manageable, not very difficult. So three questions were specifically from Trigo. So overall geometry had around 12 to 13 questions. Numbers, HCF, LCM, there was one question on HCF. Product of two numbers is given and HCF is given, and we were supposed to find, one number is given, the other number we are supposed to find. Exactly similar question with different numbers was asked in last year's paper. So a lot of our students said that they had done the last year's paper, so this question resembled very close to what was asked last year, albeit with different numbers. Okay. Algebraic identities, there were 3 to 4 questions. Okay. Logarithms and a few questions using exponents and indices, which you could have solved by taking log, were 3 to 4 questions. PNC probability. PNC, I think there was only one question. Probability, there were 3 questions. One question was on dice. 2 dice are being rolled, and probability of prime numbers was asked. One was on a coin flip, and something related to heads and tails was asked, and that's all. And one question from statistics on standard deviation was asked. Okay. So, and yeah, again, so there was absolutely no DI, which was the case last time also, which is a little surprising, but yes, there was absolutely no DI. One interesting thing that almost all our students reported was in the cons section, the first 20 to 25 questions were slightly on the higher side of difficulty. The moment you start 26, 27, 28 questions, suddenly the difficulty level dropped, and suddenly all the other questions were starting to be very manageable. Okay, this was weird, and this was interesting because it really tests your composure in the exam as a student. After the first 20-25 questions of skipping, going ahead, skipping, going ahead, and cursing yourself that you're not knowing, you have to go ahead, etc. Suddenly you go till 25th, 26th question, you have that stamina, you reach there, and then suddenly things start becoming easier for you. For people, a lot of our students also started the paper from the reverse, and they were in for a very pleasant surprise. Okay, so that's a lesson to be learned for every student, that you should always look at all your questions, select your questions, and only then start solving. Don't directly get into it. But anyway, so yeah, that's the pattern that they identified in quant. Almost all students told us this. Okay, overall we thought between the two sections, as I said earlier also, this was slightly difficult. Last year also the quant's cutoff was slightly lower than the verbal cutoff. This time also we think it's going to be similar. Okay, so overall we are seeing overall difficulty easy to overall difficulty moderate to difficult. Good attempts will be 28 to 32, and good score should be more than 76. Okay, so 28 to 32 should be a good number of attempts with a decent 90-95% accuracy. If you have attempted more, provided that you do not compromise on your accuracy, you are in the safe zone. So yeah, that's about quant. I think 76 plus should easily fetch you a PI call. So this is the cutoff that we think would happen this year. Verbal would be around 75, 76, and quant should be at 32. Last year we had few of our students even getting a PI call for IIM Kozhikode at scores of around 28, 29. This year we think the cutoff might go still higher, slightly higher. So we are saying we are predicting it might go till 32. Yeah, shortlisting criteria. The process of the PI is slightly different as compared to maybe a Rohtak or an Indore here. If you see, the 40% weightage is given to the score that you are going to get in this particular exam. 30% weightage is to your 12th percentage that you have got, and another 30% is to your 10th. Now, this 100% will decide whether you go to the PI stage or not. PI stage is independently evaluated, and then you get a final admit for the IIMK. That's how the process for IIMK is working. So, if here in this 40%, if you are in that good score range that we were talking about earlier, you basically score as high as possible of this 40%. If you are just at the cutoff level, you are just about cutting, and if you know, then you need to have like excellent 10th and 12th scores, which obviously will be 95 plus, 97 plus. So then these things you'll have to leverage if you are slightly lower here. If you are in the good score range here, you might just get away with 2, 3, 4, 5% lesser in your 12th, 10th and 12th. But yeah, that's basic math. That's how it's going to work. So obviously more the merrier. So yeah, that's the shortlisting criteria, and yeah, that will be it for now. I hope you've cleared whatever we could, and you now have a clear picture of how the paper was and what can we expect. I genuinely wish all the best to all of you, and I sincerely wish that you get your PI calls and you convert your PI. See you.